Why are you taller than me? I want to be the tallest.
You pump your chair up a little bit.
Yeah,
Because Matthew is a big, giant man.
I'm very giant.
And I am a tiny little lady.
Not finding the pumper. Fetch me a cushion. Prop me up. I'm a tiny man.
Let the record show that I'm just sat on a slightly higher chair. Just slightly. Matthew's has got a bit more sink. Mine's a little firmer.
I'm going slouching too much.
Hi.
Hello, world.
Hello, it's been a while.
We're back
We are.
with pearls of wisdom.
Yes, from the beyond.
The beyond of
Quarantine. Well, not quarantine. Isolation. Social... Wait.
semi-isolation.
Yeah, physical distancing. You know, from anyone who's not us, mostly.
Yeah, and the dogs.
And the dogs. Yes, the dogs are part of our social unit.
The dogs are like our go-between, how we send cuddles from one person to another, which is definitely a potential germ carrying.
It's true, actually. That's true. Like when we go,
It's like social
when we can
acceptance
see
germ
people that
carrying.
we like, you know, the dogs are our messengers to, you know, go and give them some smooching.
What's that red thing flashing on the left? Oh no, it isn't it? Why is it? Is it saying it's running out of space or something? I don't know.
No, I think that's just recording, isn't it?
That one there.
Don't know.
Well, oh no, I guess that's how long it's got left.
Whew.
Anyways, experimental camera. What should we talk about on our podcast episode today?
Relationship in quarantine. Welcome.
What have we been learning about relationship and quarantine? What pearls of wisdom do we have?
Oh man, I have been speaking to a few people who are in quarantine with their beloved, and one thing that seems to be relatively universal is there's more friction around when you are the majority of each other's social circle.
The divorce rate in China went up massively, someone told me.
Yes.
That's some pretty big friction.
Yeah, that's some pretty big friction. I've also been reading really saddening reports of domestic violence going up massively as well, and in countries like France, which have been under slightly tighter lockdown than we have. So
everything comes to the surface, huh? And I guess we don't have our normal escape methods is maybe a bit strong, but a normal like de-fizzing. I'm not finding the right words. Decompressing kind of methods, like going and playing golf.
Yeah, I guess the things that keep some relationships together and keep some abusive partners from abusing, like, you know, I guess, like some sort of pressure release valve.
Pressure release
activities.
Yeah.
Not necessarily to compare those or to put those two on a level, because obviously I'm talking about two very, very different things, but I think there is some similarity in the sense that having a way of letting off steam, having a way that's not your partner, is going to mean that when you do come together, you're kind of more resourced and more refreshed. I think, anyway.
Yeah.
But yeah, so I'd say one thing just to be mindful of. I was talking to a friend about this yesterday, and she was saying her and her partner have started doing more kind of timeouts, like, oh, we're fighting again, let's take a breather and take a step back. And I know that for us has been something that we've been trying out more lately.
That's definitely come up, particularly in the last week or so, hasn't it? So what situation were we in? A thing came up where we were both kind of feeling, what was it? We were both feeling a bit unacknowledged or unappreciated in our own way, wasn't it?
Yeah.
And then there was a particular thing involving a bag of crisps. Without wanting to expose you in too much detail. Anyway.
A key bag of crisps.
A key bag of crisps. This is how these things start. So so you ended up feeling kind of
Unconsidered.
unconsidered,
I
not
guess.
considered.
Yeah, not sort of, which is a particular trigger point for me, given my family history. There's and my experience of childhood. There is a real wounding around not being thought of, not being remembered, not being kind of, not being considered.
And as life tends to often do, it brings us together in ways where your particular wounding is like an exact trigger for my particular wounding.
Mirror woundings.
Which in this case is feeling like I've already done a bunch of stuff that I should, of course, be acknowledged for, where I have been noticing you and appreciating you. What about all those things in the moment?
Yeah.
So in that moment, I was like really struggling and really trying hard to make space for you and not go into my stuff.
So I'm finding your twizzling distracting.
Distracting?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Just ever so
What
slightly.
would you like me to do?
I don't know. Pick a spot. There's
I'm
like
bouncing between the camera and between you.
Okay, yeah. It's just because the whole chair keeps moving.
Oh, I see.
Yeah.
That's
It's
the downside.
if it was just your head or something, I think I'd be able
Okay.
to manage
Oh,
it.
all right.
But I'm
Oh.
seeing it's like this robotic.
Yes. You should get yourself one of these things. So the trouble is, and I think this is the conclusion we came to, is that I was definitely in too much trigger to really do effective space holding, so that when you were telling me about what was going on for you, like if it was perfectly clean and you were completely owning 100% of your feelings and stuff, then I was just about able to hear it. But as soon as I interpreted the slightest bit of like blame or whatever, then I was like off on my own wounding, and then we came to the conclusion that actually, as hard as it is, because it gets so sticky in those moments.
Yeah, right. Because trigger kind of loves trigger.
Yeah, we love going into it.
It's like, and
really
I guess
hashing it out.
right. Yeah, those equal and opposite woundings. I feel like I'm making a very suggestive
It's
thing.
kind of how it is somehow. Isn't
It is. I guess there's probably a sex element in there as well. But those, sorry parents, those, if you're watching, those equal and opposite woundings, they kind of love each other and they want to hang out together.
Yeah.
It can feel like
As much as it's awful, and you kind of know it's an awful idea when it's happening, but you just want to keep going.
Just like, we'll get through this. We'll get, and I think, with rational eyes, you know that when you're in trigger, you are in the least like capable space to hold space for someone else who's in trigger. Like,
Yeah, or even like hold a bit of space for yourself so that you're able to like be with your own stuff without being completely consumed by it and
Yeah.
throwing at the other person.
I think once the trigger has been pulled, it's very, very difficult to be even vaguely rational.
It takes a lot of effort.
Yeah, there's that thing, we watched a video about this for a long time ago, but the idea, I can't remember who made it, but the idea that they were positing was that when you're in trigger, you regress to the age at which that trigger first formed. And I know very little about psychology or the human brain, but that does kind of just instinctively resonate with me. Like when I'm in trigger, all of a sudden I am a child and I don't really have any emotional intelligence or literacy. And all I want really when I'm in trigger is for somebody to just kind of scoop me up and hold me and tell me everything's going to be okay. But I do not have the faculties to ask that. Because it is kind of like, for me, being in a child brain, sometimes like very early, like toddler brain, like struggling with words.
And that's kind of a good measurement for the other person in a way. Like for me in that situation, if I feel like I'm resourced enough and centered enough that I can just come and scoop you and hold you no matter what you're saying or what's going on for you, then that's like, okay, then I can stay here and I can be in that role. But if you needing that from me is causing me to go into my own story and clash, then it's like, as much as I'd love to be able to give that to you, I'm not the person for the job in the moment. So we have to accept that.
Yeah, exactly. And I think there is I was listening to that podcast, Bliss and Grit, with Matt Kahn, and he was talking about the maturity of surrender. and how there's something I don't want to make it sound like superior or anything like that, but there is some wisdom in just knowing when to be like, okay, gonna let this go for now. Just gonna like allow this to be the shitstorm that it is.
Yeah.
And like, I don't need to. There's nothing I can, like, recognizing that there's nothing I can do from this place of trigger to fix this, and you know, we take our best, our most inspired, our most kind of affirmative action from a place of self-resource and a fullness, which you just don't have access to, or at least I don't have access to when I'm in my trigger.
And the thing that I notice within that is there's a part of me that struggles with that in the moment, because it's like admitting defeat. And there's a part of me that wants to be, I guess, perfect in a relationship.
So much.
And to be all things.
Yes, top marks in relation. 10s.
Yeah.
10s across the board.
So it's like, and later on, I think that same day, there was a moment at which we decided to take space, and it was so obviously the right thing to do in the moment, and it was so hard as well to make that decision. I guess for me, what comes up there is like worry that you're okay. I guess maybe it's worry of losing you deep down. So it's like, oh my God, if you're not okay and I'm just leaving you to go out and, like, God forbid, take care of yourself. And you're not here for me to, like, control the situation and make sure everything's exactly as I need it to be so that you're okay, therefore I'm okay. Then it's like a sort of panic sense of losing control for me of what's going on. And I guess that's the thing that I have to then come into a relationship with, because, you know, as soon as I have you there and I don't let you go, it's like I'm not doing a good job of nurturing this thing. You know, just like squeezing down on it.
So I guess to summarise, more friction than usual is super normal in this situation. And 2 triggers, or you know, depending on your relationship,
2 triggers are worse than 1.
Yeah, or 3, right? Like, depending on how many of you are in quarantine together. I know there are some polycules out there who are all living together. But
we haven't had the dogs involved in a dispute.
No, we haven't.
Just us.
But like, multiple triggers in one conversation. Like, you're not gonna find any resolution there. So
take space.
Yeah,
that's what we're learning, and it's something we've been practicing for a while, but we've just taking it to another level. I think now we're now practicing it at that level.
Just trying to be a bit more proactive with it, like not waiting until we are both completely exhausted and worn down, and like but just like, oh, I'm triggered, you're triggered, let's pause. And that has been super helpful for us. We touched on this in our traveling video, but another thing that we're trying to do, and I know that this is really space dependent, and we are incredibly privileged to have the space in our living house in our house to be able to do this, but like regular time apart.
Should we keep going or do another video? Because we just kind of made a succinct point, didn't we?
Made a couple of points, yeah, we can stop there.
I don't know. What do you think? I'm just wondering, that's a point to either pause or we keep going and do a whole shebang.
I mean, there's probably more we could say about quarantine, but that would
there's plenty more we could say. Maybe we can keep going, see what happens.
Yeah. I'm very hay fevery. I'm snotty and sneezy.
Regular time apart, you were saying?
Yeah. I mean, this is like, I feel like this is a classic for us now at this point in our relationship. God, I'm so sneezy. I feel like that guy in Men in Black. You know, the one who's like a giant bug in a man suit. Like, when I'm about to sneeze, I have that, like, is my whole body about to just like fall out of my nose.
It's quite cute.
Thanks, because I always found that man absolutely terrifying.
I don't remember this specific one.
It's like right at the beginning of Men in Black, and he's like, sugar water, and like he's
he's like really gross.
Yeah, I feel like that's the level of gross I feel. That man should have gotten an Oscar. Prove me wrong. So yeah, taking time apart, where we specifically tend to our own needs, do our own thing, and I'm aware that like this might just be a feature of our relationship, in that I think we both have quite like, perfect relationship means always being together and like always on top of each other, and like I think we both have
like it's an issue if that's not the case.
A strange, like need for our relationship to look like that.
I kind of imagine that a lot of people have that.
Yeah, well, I mean that's why I'm sharing it, is like, because I don't think we are the only ones with that.
But I guess it's like it's quite a controversial thing. It has been for us, and I think in general, just to be able to say, I need to be on my own right now, and then to get to the point of that kind of being okay or being more okay is it's quite a journey, because obviously you can bring up stuff if one person says to another, like, I need to not be around you right now.
Please go away now.
Some people are fine with that. For us, it's been quite a journey of like, because it brings up stuff for you, and the fact that it brings up stuff for you brings up stuff for me.
Yeah.
We're still
navigating those waters, and
the seas are less stormy than they once were.
Oh man, and sometimes they're just completely fine.
Yeah.
But in any case, stormy or unstormy seas, and I'm sure we can do a whole video about that process at some point. The practice of separating, even under the same roof, has been a really helpful one for us.
Yeah, even that, because I think that might seem even a bit silly. It's like, well, if we're in the same house, surely we can't do that. And maybe if you've only got one room or something, well, even then there's things you can do. But I mean, for us, even like, we cross paths in the kitchen or whatever, we might say a quick hello.
Hey, how are you?
Maybe a small hug, although that's generally not.
Matthew doesn't like it when I try.
It happens sometimes. But it's still like the difference, even though maybe in an ideal world we would be in separate spaces, like if we're still in the same house, there's a huge benefit, I think, for us just to having an evening or a day where we're doing our own thing, just like coming back to self. I find it hard to do that in the midst of a relationship sometimes.
Oh yeah, sometimes like the moment when you least want to do it is like the one where you most need it.
Yeah.
Like working out or something, like when you have the most resistance to it, and then that's probably a sign that things have gotten a little too enmeshed.
Yeah, it's a similar kind of thing to that when you're locked in the conversation of two wounded people trying to work something out. It can get really sticky, and I definitely noticed that. Like it's still weightlifting for me if we've had a week together and things feel really nice, and I just get that little voice of like, I'd really enjoy having an evening to myself right now, just really being with myself, and immediately it still comes in, that voice of like, that means something's wrong, and I get scared to then come and bring that to you for whatever reason. I guess I'm worried that it'll be an issue, or even deeper than that, it's like, I guess it's maybe fear that it's a sign that something's wrong, something like that.
Yeah, I think we have a similar kind of story around that somewhere inside of us, and I guess that means that maybe some of you guys do too. But like, yeah, that idea that if you ever want to spend time without me, like if your deep desire is somehow not involving me, then something is fundamentally flawed, and we probably shouldn't be together, right?
Yeah.
Like this is the end.
Yeah, and then to go a bit deeper into that one is that if you have that kind of response, or if I perceive or project that kind of response in you, then mind wounding that comes up is that I'm trapped and I can't be free. And if by the mere suggestion of wanting to spend some time on my own, it's in any way an issue, it's that, well, I'm trapped and I'll forever be trapped and I can't possibly be myself ever again. Amen. So therefore I have to get out of, like, panic brain comes in, so I have to get out of it. So I think this time, when we last did Space, which was a couple of days ago or whatever, for me it was quite, you said it was a weird conversation. I actually found it, I mean, it was a bit weird, but it was quite constructive for me, because I got to the point where I was able to see that thing that I described happening in real time, for myself and my own fears that come up around that, and just be
Oh, I'm sorry.
there. Allergies.
Yes. Oh, I just feel my eyes starting to twitch and seize up. They're so itchy. Oh.
Oof.
Yeah, fucking pollen.
Mm.
Motherfucking
I wonder
pollen.
what we can do.
Yeah. There's probably stuff, right? I'm not the only person with hay fever out there.
Yeah.
But you were saying...
Wim Hof breathing.
Yeah, I might
Maybe.
do some more of that. Okay. Sorry. You were
I was saying,
about watching it play out in real
watching
time.
it play out in real time. Oh yeah, so that my go-to with that at the moment is just voicing it and trying to own it as much as possible when I voice it. Just to say, okay, right now I'm feeling fear that you're clashed out, and therefore it's not okay for me to go and do this, and therefore I feel trapped or whatever. It might be something along those lines often for me. And my strategy, I guess, for at the moment is just to feel those things, and if I can communicate it, and it might be in me saying that it brings up stuff for you, but what I'm trying to caveat it with is this is not me saying ultimately it's a problem or you need to be or do anything different. It's just I'm trying to communicate these fears. Of course, it might land with you in a way that it feels like I'm telling you need to be different and you're not allowed to feel what you're feeling. But again, that's the conversation.
Yeah, I think there's a real art in wherever possible framing those things in the story that's happening for me is, or the story that my brain is telling me about this is, and it's kind of something about putting it in that box. For me, receiving it makes it so much easier. And not always. There's sometimes where I'm like, fuck you, fuck your story. But more often than not, if I hear that, I'm like, yes, okay.
Yeah, it helps. It's a cushion.
Yeah, exactly. It helps me kind of put that in the right. Okay, so this is your specific blend of coping mechanisms that you have inherited and formed throughout your 39 years on this planet. Kicking in.
I feel like it's like the whole process of this is gradually tuning more and more into that. Exactly what you just said. It's like, oh, you're clashed out and you're reacting in that way, and it doesn't mean the world is ending.
Yeah.
It's like we're slowly, every time, getting a little bit more closer to that being rooted in us, rather than it's like we're learning to recognise what part of us is panicking, I guess.
Yeah, and to not take that personally, I think.
Or if we do take it personally, to recognise that we're taking it personally.
Yeah, exactly.
As
And it's
much
like,
as we
oh,
can.
there go my coping mechanisms.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I think holding as much tenderness as possible for all of those different parts of ourselves. There's something in that. Recognizing that we are all this mad jumble of voices and parts. I mean, we both work with, that was quite aggressive, somatic experiencing practitioners, and I think that work has been pretty fundamental for me in understanding there's a part of me that needs this, there's a part of me that needs that. What if they're both right? And rather than picking the one I prefer and giving all of my attention to that one, how can I bring the unloved parts of myself, the kind of rejected parts of myself, how can I bring them in, bring them into from the cold, sit them at the table, and I think by finding ways to frame what's going on for us with this language of okay, there's this story, I'm feeling this story right now, or I'm really feeling, we quite often say this, I can, there's a part of me that's angry about this, or there's a part of me that's feeling really afraid, and rather than saying all of me is angry and furious with you, which I think I have definitely done in the past, that was my language for a long time. It's more it's kind of easy to receive as if it's because I don't think it's ever true that, I mean, maybe sometimes in our lives we are 100% furious.
Well, that's what was coming up for me. It's it feels more true that actually it's a part of you.
Yeah, and I think recognizing, and both of us having that shared language of these different voices and these different bits of us is really helpful for navigating these changes, fluctuations in our state together more smoothly. Because I think my therapist was saying this on Friday, and I really like this, and he was saying, you know, it's not about finding a way to always be happy. Like, that's not what we're here to do. It's more about finding ways to navigate the fluctuations more easily with more grace.
That's a really good point, I think, because that's what it can feel like in those moments when both people are a little bit in trigger, a little bit in wounded space. Then it can feel like we need to find the perfect solution to this now, and that's why we're not leaving this room until we work
until
this
we're
out.
both really happy.
You know, whereas actually the more constructive and mature approach seems to be like, can I sit with in myself the discomfort of knowing that maybe I need space, maybe I need to take time for myself, and knowing that that's going to feel really hard, and that there's a part of me that's going to panic about the relationship being in this sort of uncontrolled mystery space. And at the same time, like, being able to hold the idea that you're not okay, but not needing to come and
Rescue.
save and fix that.
Yeah, there's a lot of in that idea of like, can I sit with my own pain, and can I also sit with your pain, your, you know, potential painful response to my needs.
Yeah, like that is the way to a more grounded and smooth relationship, really.
Yeah, I think so. So, yeah, taking time out if things get too sticky, taking time apart before things get too sticky, and I mean, we're super privileged to have access to therapy as well, which has been a real support for our space in lots of ways. Yeah, I mean...
Yeah, staying in conversations just with other friends as well helps.
Yes.
Because that tendency to, like, for the relationship to become the whole universe, of course, is easier in these current times of quarantine.
Yeah.
And I notice when I have a good chat with a friend, I come up feeling like, oh my God, like, okay, there's that part of me that really feels a connection or gets met by that relationship with that other person that maybe doesn't happen in the same way with us. And that's really important.
I mean, that's been like such a big part of our space together over the years, I think, is recognizing that there are parts of us that have specific needs that are not being met by this relationship. And that's okay.
Yeah.
Like,
but we have to be a bit more mindful about making that happen now that it's not happening automatically by our day-to-day lives.
Yeah. And you know, we've kind of talked about this in the past about the idea of what monogamous or primarily monogamous partnerships could learn from like the polyamorous community is just a little bit of awareness around this idea that like one person isn't and shouldn't be your everything, and therefore, you know, other relationships, friendships, family stuff, like that's all super important as a way of nourishing these parts of us that aren't being met, or perhaps being less met by, you know, our primary relationship with each other. So nourishing yourself on your own, but also nourishing your friendships and your other relationships, because they're important, and relationships take work, all of them. The one you have with you, the one you have with your partner, and the ones you have with the people in your life. Like, that's another part of our learning, I think, over the years. There's a strange myth I certainly took on, which is that once you find your one, it's just like easy and great and happy forever.
It's funny how much that persists, isn't it? I still notice that voice in me whenever something like undesirable happens. it's like, oh, I must be in the wrong
Mm.
place with the wrong person.
Yeah,
So
no,
that
this-
voice is still there. It's like, yeah, there is an expectation of the perfect mother / lover / whatever, all other things.
Yeah. Yeah,
It's a funny one to get beyond that sometimes.
for sure. Yeah, it's one of those voices that's in the mix.
Yeah, I guess so. And I guess it also needs accepting and bringing some tenderness to.
Yeah.
Yeah, like that's there. It's probably going to be there. I find it hard to accept that, actually. I don't know. I noticed in saying that there's definitely like a rejection of that part of me internally, of like there's part of me that's trying to get rid of that part that's looking for perfection,
Right.
rather than accept it.
Something to sit with.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I think so.
Yeah, I definitely have a big dose of that as well. Like, there's days when I'm just not up for the work, and I think being in lockdown together, and again, my therapist, such a hero, what a hero. He was talking about the way that when your external world, your life outside of your house, your work and everything.
This one has stopped recording, has it? Yes.
Shit.
Yeah, it reached the half-hour point.
What? We've
This-
been talking for half an hour?
Yeah.
Bloody hell.
This one's still going. 32 minutes.
What are we doing? Oh my god. We're going to have to
Joe Rogan podcast.
cut this down a little
Hello,
bit.
Safi.
It's some long form shit.
Come here.
Yeah, dog time.
Dog time,
Dog
time.
time.
Dog time.
Dog interlude. Speed demon. Don't know the words enough. Speed
I don't know.
demon.
You're not tall enough, dog. Let's get you a booster cushion.
What do you think, Saf?
What is your opinion? You seem to get on pretty well. Well, I don't know, actually. You growl at Margot, your living companion, when she comes too near your favourite cushion, don't you?
Mm-hmm.
Don't know if that's very NBC of you.
And she's been spending lots of time diving down rabbit and badger holes. And scaring the pants off us when we lose her for 5 minutes. But, pretty resilient little thing. Okay, you're very distracting.
What were we saying?
We were talking about the parts of us that want everything to be perfect and easy.
Yes.
And don't want the relationship to be work. And I was talking about what Gavin said, where with the outer world being constricted and kind of drawn in, all of your inner stuff gets kind of splashed up on this, this much closer canvas. Like there's an inner expansion. Which reminds me of what Matt Kahn was saying on the Bliss and Grit podcast, which is this thing of like, lots of us, those of us who are fortunate enough to have a home and to have the kind of wherewithal to be able to sort of reflect on what's going on, have found ourselves, I think some of us, in a similar situation to being on, the way he described it, as like a meditation retreat that you didn't ask to be on. Like a Vipassana.
Yes.
That you go on a meditation retreat and then they lock you in the toilet. And then you're just stuck in a tiny room on your own.
Actually, you thought you were going on a meditation retreat, but
you're
it's
actually
a different
on a
one.
much more restricted meditation
Right, okay.
retreat than you thought you were going for. And so, yeah, and so I think the sense of work and processing and conflict and, having to, sort of the grind, I guess, the grittier part of relationship is like much more in the foreground, I think, than it normally would be in that space, because your inner stuff is like, cool, I have a container in which to
Right.
like
It's like, we're
spread
not
out.
going anywhere. May as well
Yeah,
work this stuff out.
let's dig up all the shit.
Come on then, yeah. Spread it out. It's funny, isn't it?
Yeah.
It's probably, potentially quite healthy process. Potentially terrible and destructive, and
It's kind of a make or break thing in a way.
A little bit, yeah, right? I mean, they say that about traveling together. They say that about having a baby. I think there's a similar energy to this particular situation. Like, there's people who have moved in together because of COVID-19.
Yeah, I guess there must be.
And who have like taken a step forward, I guess, in their relationship in that way, kind of more earlier than they would otherwise have done.
Now discovering, wait, who are you?
Yeah.
This isn't who I asked to move in with me.
Yeah.
No,
Yeah.
maybe it's working out great. Shouldn't be so pessimistic.
I'm sure there's people who are having a really smooth time and really enjoying.
We've had some good banana cake, some very lovely meals,
Yeah.
some great dog walks.
Yeah.
Getting outside has been really good. We're quite lucky in that. We've got wonderful walks right
Yeah.
behind us.
Totally. And we spent some time dancing. I mean, the internet's
Dancing,
just so great. I feel like we're waffling a little bit at this stage. I wonder if the pith is done.
Yeah, I kind of imagine this one being slightly more waffly. Like, I'm curious about doing a conversational thing, as much as a delivering piles of wisdom.
Yeah,
thing.
let us lay them upon you.
I guess conversational thing is easier because like we haven't done a video for so long. I wonder if one of the reasons is because we're in the back of our minds we're trying to get this like perfect thing that we can deliver rather than just set up the camera, start chatting.
Yeah.
About what's there.
Yeah, there's probably a certain amount of that. Yes. Yes.
You look done.
I am pretty done.
I guess we're done. I guess 36 minutes is our current limit
Right now.
in hay fever season.
I need to go and like wash my eyes, I think. But is there anything else to say? Is there anything else you want to touch on?
I don't think so. I think that's a pretty good encapsulation for now. Maybe there'll be more
Maybe there will.
as we digest
And as we progress into
deeper realms,
of lockdown.
tales of the unknown.
Yeah, I mean it's not over yet. That thing about it being finished by Easter Sunday.
Oh, was that the initial?
That was what some
We'll
people were
definitely
saying.
be out
Are
of
we
this
done by
by
Easter?
Easter.
Don't think so, bitches.
Apparently not.
And there's a part of me that doesn't want. I mean, obviously, I do not want the dying to be happening. That is shit.
Yeah.
And I don't want to downplay that, but like, I'm not done exploring lockdown yet.
That's true. I mean,
If they were to say, okay, right, it's all over tomorrow, I would be like a bit sad.
I would feel like as much as loads of other things, like I'm working on music and stuff at the moment, even just this stuff that we've been talking about, there is an intensity to it and it can be quite hard. But actually, if lockdown was over tomorrow, I would feel a bit like, oh fuck, like we were getting somewhere with the stuff that's like coming to the surface in our relationship, and as much as it's sometimes hard, I'm actually really appreciating the opportunity to explore that.
Yeah, it feels like a good container for that.
Yeah.
We are curious to hear about you as well.
Yes.
If any of what
Let
we've
us
said
know.
is resonant or not. Because I really want to caveat this. I think some people took our last video to be like, this is the truth.
Did they?
And I think someone, I can't remember who it was, we were talking about jealousy and someone was like, yeah, but no. And I guess
yeah, they did, didn't they?
I really would like to...
That person was wrong.
It's not what I'm saying.
Oh, okay.
What I'm saying is anything we share in these videos is like our experience.
Yeah, what
And-
we're experimenting with and what kind of
Yeah.
works for us.
Yeah, and I really, really, really am 100% deathly allergic to the idea that our experience and our ideas about this are 100% right for 100% of people. Like, that's not where I'm at all. Like, this is our stuff, and yeah, what's working and not working for us. And I want to encourage you guys to find what works and doesn't work for you. Hopefully, what works for you. I'm not going to encourage you to find what doesn't work specifically.
Well, it's part of the process.
but yeah, I mean, and I think that's why we're sharing this. Is like we've had ideas and gone down rabbit holes and gone down things which actually might be really valuable for you too. And that's really my kind of hope with sharing this is that you'll get some value or some idea or be like, fuck that, not doing that, you know.
You've perked up again. What happened? You were done like 5 minutes ago.
I don't know.
You were on a roll.
Got a second wind.
Yeah.
I guess, yeah. This is just
Sorry, I interrupted your flow.
It's fine. I wasn't really going anywhere. But just that this is not the gospel.
Oh, you're flagging again.
Yeah. Damn you, and you're like noticing.
Sorry.
Fuck.
Yeah. Okay.
Right.
Good. Thank you. Thank you for coming.
Bye bye.
Say bye, Saf.